So there are a few things that we are actually going to try doing this time. There is basically, we are going to try using arrays. Try using arrays. We are trying using functions in arrays. So second thing, we're going to try doing a few functions, which is basically mean, standard deviation, maximum, minimum, and then creating a function which takes in an array as an input and returns an array. So the first thing, mean. So you have an array like this. Zero, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is array of size 10, which is basically from 0 to 9. The first element, assuming this array is called A, the first element is A0, A1, A2, A3, so on till A9. Now what we are going to try to do is a few things. Assuming we need to calculate mean, what we need to do is take all these values, add them, and then divide by total number of values. So once we add them, so the sum over, assuming it's array dot length, will give you the size of the array. A dot length is size of the array. So that's basically mean. The next thing is essentially standard deviation. So you're going to calculate standard deviation. So standard deviation basically is the value essentially minus the mean square sum of all these values divide by n, which is number of values, and under root. So how do we calculate that? So essentially you will be calculating sum is equal to sum plus, how do we calculate this? Assuming the name of the function is average, say array, this will return a mean back, and that will be, so assuming that's the mean variable, so we will do a I minus mean, so square will actually give you that, and then we'll take the sum and divide by a length basically, which is n, and then square root. So this is how you're going to calculate standard deviation. So let's try coding this and see how it actually works. So let's try coding this and see. So how that actually works. So the thing is, few things to know if you want to access an element in an array. So A, this is the element number, which is basically tells you the first element A, assuming if the size is n minus 1 is the last element. So now assuming you have 10 values, the first element is 0 and the last element is 9. Assuming you have 50 values, the first element is 0, the last element is 49. So 0 to 49 is 50 values. So now let's start programming it. So how do we do it? So it's plain and simple. Let's start with first initializing the array, and then we do a few things after that. So we're going to make, so what we're going to do, so we are going to first create a new project. Let's say, okay, new Java project. You can call it array functions example. So we create a new example, an arrays functions example, and we call it new class functions. So we create that. So we create, the first thing is do is import java dot util scanner, and then we pull in scanner. So we pull in scanner. So few things though. One, we need to create a new array, which is int array sign, basically telling you it's an array. Now we call numbers that we are actually going to take in is equal to new int. Now we need to do something which is cool. So we'll create an int variable which is called size, which is, say, let's assume, say, 5 numbers. Okay. So int size. So we just take size in here, basically that makes the size of the thing. So the next thing is we need to read it. So if we read it, so we do for int I equal to 0, where it starts to I less than size I plus plus. That said, let's do a few things. So how do we read it? So we say system out dot, so a few things though. System out dot print ln enter value, enter value, and then let's try reading the value. So we say numbers I, where the value goes into numbers, it says sc dot next int, because we have an int. Okay, so we are reading all the numbers. Now why is it complaining? Because it's not number, it's numbers. Okay, now I'm going to public static. First thing is, let's try seeing if we can, this is next int. Okay, public static, let's do void. Void basically is that there is nothing that's actually returned. Okay, and print array. So what this is going to do is, this is going to print all the values that we put in. Now in this case, let's take in int your array that you are actually putting in. Okay, and then what we can say is, if int I is equal to 0, I less than, so we won't call it array, we call it numbers. So we can call it numbers, which is basically the array that we in, and then we do I plus plus. So what this does is, int I equal to 0, numbers, Uh, if no, for. Okay. And then int I plus plus. And then we do system dot out dot println, and then we print the array. What do we print? It's numbers dot I. So what it happens is it goes through each element and then it returns the value. Basically, it writes the value out. So let's try playing with it a little bit. So I have five values. I'm going to say enter value. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These five values are stored in numbers. I pass the numbers into print array. So I can say print array numbers. So this numbers array will go into here as the input, the parameter, and it will print it. So let's try it again. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's going to print all the numbers because it goes through and prints each number. Now, what we can do is make it like index plus I plus basically. So this prints every index for you and making it more nicer. So basically to check if the array actually went in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we can say index 0 is 1, 1, 2. So it keeps on and stores the value. So let's continue on. So the next thing we need to do is we need to public. So we need to calculate average, which is basically mean, which is going to be a double that returns. So public static double. So I'm going to say, so mean array takes in your int numbers. Now we go through. So what we need to do is we need to go through and add all of them. So how do we add all of them? First thing we need to say double sum, which is basically sum of all the arrays is 0. Then we say for int I equal to 0, I less than numbers dot length essentially, and I plus plus. Okay, so I put that in there. Now I need to go through and add. I'm going to say sum is equal to your old sum plus your number element. So this gives me the sum. And then what I can do is I can return my sum divide by numbers dot length. And you can look at this. This is returning a double. Or I can also do something nicer. I can say double mean n is equal to 0. And then I can say, making it nicer, mean is equal to sum divided by numbers dot length, and then I can mean. There you go. The numbers dot mean. Okay, so there you go. So that returns my mean. So if I want to see the mean of the numbers, I can say system out print ln. So I can say okay, my mean plus I will say mean of my array, which is basically numbers. It will get printed there. So let's try. So let's do enter. So what's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? What's the mean of that? Is 3. Because the sum of all of them is 15. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So that's your mean. Okay. So the next thing we need to look at is standard deviations. Let's do standard. That also is going to be double. So this is telling you what value it's returning. This is telling you the parameter it's taking in, the input. And this is the usage of the mean. So mean is calculated. Okay, so let's calculate now. Double standard deviation of array. So what's the input? Int array numbers, and then so we're going to say double standard deviation is equal to 0, and then we can return standard deviation. Then we say double. So my mean is equal to mean array. I'm calling the function that I wrote above numbers. I can do that. So that gives me the mean. And then how do I calculate? So I need to go through the loop for int equal to 0, I less than length, I plus plus, okay, and then int I equal to 0, okay, okay, there you go. Now I have to add all of them. So my, and the next thing I need is sum. So I am calculating first the sum. Sum is equal to sum plus the expression. So it will be number minus mean square, which is basically square will be either this into this, or we can do math power 2. Okay, and then standard deviation is equal to math square root of sum divided by length, which is the mean value. Okay, so that returns standard deviation. Now if you want to calculate, then we can calculate by doing this standard deviation, so ST. And then next thing we need to calculate. So this basically goes through with squares, you know. So this is your formula, x minus mean to the power of 2. Okay, and this is basically so this is the square root of x minus mean to the power of 2 divided by number of values. Okay, the next one is finding minimum value in your this thing. So we can to say so now in this case it's an int that you are building because all the numbers are integer. Min array, and then we can say int numbers, okay, minimum value. So what we say, int minimum value, initialize it, say numbers 0, so the first element, and then I do for int equal to 0, I less than length plus plus I plus plus. Now the next thing we do is, so now minimum value. So if my min value is less than numbers, then my min is equal to I essentially, and then I can, so then I do here is return my min value. Okay, why is it complaining? Because I put a semicolon, the bracket here and closed it. Okay, so there we go. Now I can also do something similar, which is basically max, essentially, which is maximum value. So I can copy it over. So I can say max, basically. So I can say max, and then I can say if number is, if max is greater, if numbers is greater than max, that means new max, then max is equal to numbers, and then we return max. Okay, so we've done min, max, and then let's call those. You can say min, so I say min is being calculated, max is being calculated, and then so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now the issue that you are seeing is both min and max are returning 5. Why is that so? Standard deviation looks okay. If numbers is greater than max, then max is equal to, so max should be 5 and min should be. So if min is greater than numbers, so if you have min value, then you need to replace the min. So that makes sense. Let's try again. Yep, min's 5, 1, and this thing is 5. So let's try a non-uniform thing. So let's say 20, 34, 23, 35, 14. So 14 should be minimum value, 35 should be maximum. 22. 14 minimum, 35, and then you get standard deviation. Now another thing that you need to know is, assuming I have a function which, let's actually do a share, and so there you go. So I'm going to do the next one, which basically is, so now, so I have a function 3x squared plus 5, and I want to do it for every array. So you have this array, okay, 10 values, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9. So basically 10 values. And I want to calculate for all of them. So this is 3, 5, 1, 7, 2, 9, 14, 3, 1. Okay, so this one, when we calculate, we have to return an array value. Each value of this corresponds to an array value. So in this case, it will be 3 into 3 squared plus 5, which is equal to 27 plus 5, 32. So this is 32. The next value will be 3 into 5 squared plus 5, which is equal to 80. 75 plus this thing. And 1, 3 into 1 squared plus 5, which is equal to 8. And so on. So if there are 10 values here, you get 10 answers. So if A is 0 to 10, your 0 to 9, your answer will be another Each of this will give you this guy. So if your answer is 1, you have another one, and that will give you 10 values. So we will be returning a array. So let's try programming that. So let's see. So what we say is public static int rotating function, so array, and your input is an int, which is basically your numbers. Okay. So we need to return something which is basically an array. So what we do is we say int function return is equal to, so we say new int, new int, new int. Now we don't know what the size is, but it will be the same as numbers. Okay. And that, now we need to calculate for each of those values. So okay, so we need to calculate for each of the values. So say for int I equal to 0, I less than numbers dot length I plus plus. Now the function return for each of the element of function return is equal to 3 into x square, which is basically numbers I into I x square plus 5. So this is basically 3x to the power of 2 plus 5. So 3x3 into x to the power of 2, and x is basically replaced by this number. So let's try doing it. Now, how do we print something like that out? So first thing we need to calculate, so we say int array function, so just call it function return values is equal to, I say function numbers, get an array back. Now I want to show, so we have function array is calling that function, and now I save that function return values and I can print it. So you can say okay, can we print the numbers because there are more than one, so I can print this guy and put it here to see my answers. If you see, in this case you are returning an integer array, essentially this guy, and you can't just print it, you just have to pass it to a function to print it. So let's try. So enter value 1, 2, 3, 5. There you go. So first is 18. So 2 into 1, 3 into 2 square is 4. 4 plus 3 into 4, 12, plus 5 is 17. 53, and so these are answers. So you can take one row and you can continue on, do that. So there is something which is called function overloading. It's possible that you may also need the function, like assuming you, it's possible that you need a max and min to also do for double, not just int. So what we can do, we can actually do double, and we can return a double, and that's, And then we can do take in, if we have double, we take in double. So what is happening is you have another function which the signature is very different. You can have but does a different thing. So when this is called and you pass in a double, it will automatically do this function. This is called function overloading. Few more things. You can also have more than one parameter. You can say double numbers 2. Okay, so I want two numbers, and there you go. I can also do, I can take two sets. So this is different. So if we pass two numbers, which are two arrays, then max array will automatically call this function. Okay, this is called function overloading. Okay, that's it.